Writer, the District Attorney for Kennebec and Somerset Counties, Megan Maloney.
Well, I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I know that we have this wonderful group of people on the stage. One thing that I am absolutely certain of is that one of the people on this stage tonight is going to be the next governor of the state. Now, I'm glad you all applauded because I'm hoping you got it out of your system. What we're asking for you to do from this time forward, in order to make sure that we have as much time as possible to hear from the candidates, is to not applaud, but you can express your agreement with someone's remarks by doing as our wonderful sign language interpreters will show you, the symbol for applause. So no noise, doesn't interrupt them, they can still speak, and yet you can show your appreciation for their remarks. So that's what we're hoping that will work tonight. And of course, we're hoping for no negative comments, no interruption of the candidates and what they want to say, no signs. We just really want to hear from everyone and to do so as respectfully as we can. So we're in great appreciation that they're here tonight. So let us get started. I'll tell you the format is going to be, first we'll hear from each candidate, 3 minutes each, opening statement. Then we're going to ask some questions. These questions come from a Facebook feed that Alicia Barnes set up, that people were able to post their questions and vote on the questions that they thought were best. And then she printed out the top response questions and gave them to me in a lovely secret blue folder, which I will be cracking open to see what these amazing questions will be. And then if we have time, because for each question we're asking the candidates to speak no more than 90 seconds. So if we can accomplish that, then we'll have time for closing statements at the end. So that's the hope. So let us see, the order for speaking has also been randomly assigned by Alicia with her great computer program. And I have that right here. So first we will be hearing from Attorney General Janet Mills.
Oh, thank you. From here. Go. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Janet Mills. I'm the Attorney General of the state of Maine, and it's been a pleasure to serve in that role for the last 4.5 years, and 2 years previous to that, then I had to go on sabbatical when the House and Senate turned over and became Republican. But I want to let you know, if you don't know, I grew up about 48 miles from here in a small town of Farmington. I grew up with a family of 3 brothers and 1 baby sister, who's no longer a baby, of course. I got to know my friends and neighbors in my community by delivering newspapers to them as a child, and then by serving hamburger meatloaf and mac and cheese to them as a teenager at the Shiretown Diner. And I'll tell you, the people in my neighborhood, my town, they don't tolerate bullies. They don't put up with bullies. And they expect you, and they expected me, not only to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. That's why when I grew up, and I could see that women's rights were not being respected in the Maine legislature, for instance, I saw the bills that we supported and advocated for, fought for year after year, were being killed in the back rooms of the Appropriations Committee. I helped form the Maine Women's Lobby. And now I am proud that the Maine Women's Lobby is the longest existing organization of its kind in the United States. And when I became the district attorney, the first woman district attorney in New England, I saw a lot of wrongs that I tried to right. When I saw tough cases of domestic violence, I took them on personally and tried them and put people in jail. When I saw issues with our bail system and our sentencing system, I fought for reforms of the bail laws and sentencing laws to make sure that the rights of people accused of crime and the people who are victims of crime were equally respected and protected. And when I got to be your Attorney General a few years ago, it was then I took on the biggest bully the state of Maine has ever seen, Paul R. LePage. Thank you, thank you. Shh, 1 minute, okay. And when he told me he wanted to take thousands of Maine children off of health care, I said no, and he filed suit, and I fought back, and I won. And I took on the special interests and the corporate interests, and I won. I took on the pharmaceutical companies time and time again. I'm still doing that, and I've won, and I'm still winning. I took on Standard & Poor's, and I won. And I used money from settlements to help people facing foreclosures in their homes, and I've won. And when the governor last year said he didn't think Narcan worked because it just postponed death, it didn't save lives, I took settlement monies from the pharmaceutical companies, and I turned it around to do a greater good. I bought a room full of Narcan, and I've taken it all across the state of Maine and delivered it to 60 law enforcement agencies. And as of 2 days ago, we've saved 267 lives. I'm about getting things done, no matter what the odds are, and that's what I'll do as your governor. And thank you, my time is up.
And our next speaker is Speaker Mark Eves.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here this evening with you and on the stage with terrific candidates, and I think I would agree with the statement about any one of us would be a vast improvement over the current governor, and it is a real honor to be here this evening. You know, I know this is a candidates forum, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I did well before I ever thought about getting into public office. Before I was Speaker of the House, I spent a lot of time with families in trouble. I drive out to their homes in rural parts of our state, to towns like Newfield and Parsonsfield and Porter. I drive down their driveways and I knock on their doors. And I never know what was on the other side. It could be a parent barely holding it together. It could be a kid totally out of control, and sometimes something a whole lot worse. But when people are in trouble, you do not give up on them. You walk through that door, you sit with them, you listen to them, and if you stick with it, day after day, that's when you start to understand what is standing in their way, and that is when you can do something about it. Now, I tell you that story because we better start listening to people in Maine about the things that frustrate them and hold them back, because it's real. And what we do about it in my hometown of North Berwick might look different than what we do about it in Minot and Madawaska and all the back roads and main streets in between. But we all have a stake in this. And if we take the time to really honor what people are going through, to stick with it, to show up, to understand, that's when we can lift the pressures that families are living under today and improve their lives. You know, that's the approach that I took when I walked through the front door of the State House. The lessons that I learned with working with families in crisis, I applied to the State House. That's how we were able to pass an affordable senior housing bond. That's how we were able to pass a middle-class tax cut against all odds. It's how we were able to start workforce development programs. It is that what I think is missing in politics today and why it is so broken. We haven't seen that from our governor in the last 7 years. We certainly haven't seen that in our president. And it's that approach that I think is going to start to bring together a state that can sometimes feel all too divided. If we do that, and we see the good in each other, even when we disagree, that's when I think we can do some pretty great things for the state. And that's why I'm proud to be a candidate for governor, and very proud to be on the stage with terrific candidates. Look forward to engaging in the Q&A, and I think I beat the 3 minutes. So
you're awesome.
All right, there we go. It's great to be with you guys. Thank you for being here.
And Major Adam Cody.
All right. Major, huh? All right. Well, I see fall is here. It started about an hour ago, I think. I should start off by wishing Betsy Sweet happy birthday. We can all do that. in her honor, we all came here tonight to talk politics. Congratulations. Real quickly, give you my background, why I'm running. Born and raised in Sanford, come from a big family down there. My wife is a first-generation American. She's from Colombia. We're raising 5 young kids. I have a background in public policy and public service and business law and in the military. I've served in everything from local school boards to statewide boards, Maine Veterans Housing Coalition. I started the Maine Young Democrats back when I qualified as one. They kick you out when you're 35. On the business side, legal side, I've worked primarily in renewable energy. Worked with all forms of renewable energy, smart grid technology, was recognized by President Obama as one of 12 people in the country, veterans recognized for our work on climate change and energy independence. Signed one of the biggest solar deals in Maine history a few months ago, which I like to say, but if you know anything about energy, it's only 3 megawatts, and that's more a testament to how poor the solar industry is in Maine. I've also had 3 combat tours. As a 20-year member of the Maine National Guard, I've served in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. My wife and I talked a lot about this. We're raising a young family between the ages of 5 and 12, our kids. We've got a stake in the ground here. We're seeing that generation right above us where their kids are getting out of high school, they're getting out of college, and they're all saying the same thing. You want your kids to stay in your hometown because you want to be around them, but you also want them to have opportunity. And in 90% of the state, you can't have both. We should have the best public schools in the country right here in Maine. We should be able to provide health care for everybody in the state. We should be able to put this opioid crisis in the rearview mirror by treating it like an addiction. We're not going to arrest our way out of this. We should have the best broadband in the country. I don't care if you're dealing in health care or if you're dealing with education or trying to grow a business to sell blueberries, you need broadband, and we have one of the worst in the country. And we also need to find a way to grow our economy in the rural areas and the mill towns. We got to stop complaining about the fact our mills closed. I hear that in my hometown all the time, and they closed 20 years before I was born. We need a new generation of leaders that are going to step up and talk about what our competitive advantages are in, to grow our economy, provide opportunity for people, create the type of society here in Maine where young people want to stay, where people want to move, where they can say it's not only the best place to live, but it's the best place to make a living. So that's why I'm running for governor. Thank you for having me.
Senator Jim Boyle.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Kennebec County Democrats, for having us. My name is Jim Boyle. I'm former state senator from Gorham, represented Gorham, Scarborough, and Westbrook in 2013 and 14, and I served as the Senate Chair of the Environment Committee and also served on the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee. I'm married. I live in Gorham with my wife, Sue. We have 2 children, and I have 2 stepchildren, aged 31 to 27. I want to talk first a little about my motivating reason, really, for why I would do something like this. Is a big undertaking. It's the biggest thing I've taken on, really, in my professional life since I started my business. And so what happened to me after serving in the state Senate, I was out of the Senate after that 2-year period. One Sunday morning, I woke up and read in the Maine Sunday Telegram about the swindle that happened in the mill in East Millinocket, Maine, where my family is from. My mother was born in that town, and her grandfather came down to that area before there was a town there from Aroostook County and helped build the mill, and he worked there for 53 years until he retired at the age of 75. His offspring, my great aunts, their husbands all worked in that mill, and so did Papa's grandsons, and they were still there when it closed in 2014. So this tax credit swindle, I call it, nobody's corrected me yet on all these campaign stops. It's a swindle that happened. It got me fired up that we need people in public service that are, we need Democrats to step up and not let those kind of things happen anymore. It's what drives me. All of my friends here on the stage have heard me say it over and over again, but it keeps me coming, it keeps me fired up, and it's gonna keep me fired up all the way through. I'm here for the working people of Maine. That's where my family's from. My dad's family is from Rumford. My family are still in those towns, Rumford and East Millinocket. One of my cousins lives in the house that my great-grandfather built with his own hands. So it means a great deal to me to restore the economy of the rural areas of Maine and not let those kind of things happen. More than that, I'm a small business owner myself. I got a degree in forestry from University of Maine, where my parents both graduated, and Both of my kids are now graduated. And in 1996, I started my own environmental science business doing environmental science work, and did that for 21 years until I sold it this spring. My values and priorities come from where I just described. I think the system in Augusta is rigged, and it's rigged against the average working people of Maine. And I saw it firsthand when I was there. A lot of good people go for good reasons, but there's a few people that throw sand in the works of good government, and we need to make sure that that stops happening. Why I'm the best candidate: I've met payroll for every 2 weeks for 21 years. I had health insurance for my employees. I had an 8-person business, but we had health insurance. That's critical. I guess I'll kind of wrap up there. Our time's running short. I want to thank you for having me, and I hope I can count on your vote come June and hopefully in November. Thank you very much.
Representative Diane Russell.
Good evening. How is everybody? Yay. Go Democrats. My name is Diane Russell, and I am here to recruit you to change Maine for the better. I got started back when I first ran for office. I was working from behind the counter at a local convenience store called Colucci's, and I was making $8 an hour. And I had the opportunity to learn what it was like to actually try to make ends meet on $8 an hour. In a shocking turn of events, it doesn't work. And what I have proven time and time again is that you do not have to be rich to make a difference. I am very working class. My folks are working class. My dad gets up at 2:30 in the morning and drives to make sure that the equipment gets to the side of the road so that we can pave those roads, which is good for Democrats. We want to make sure that our infrastructure is built. And my mom is a nurse. So I didn't grow up really with a silver spoon in my mouth. I grew up very working class out in Western Maine. And I have found over time that the system is rigged against us. Now, there's a good friend of mine in the back who tells me repeatedly that the process determines the outcome. You may have heard Carl say that over and over again. The process determines the outcome. And that's the problem with a system that is rigged against us, because the system determines the outcome, which is that we no longer have a voice, that most of us have been forgotten intentionally by the upper echelon. I'm here to change that. And a lot of people will tell you the system is broken. It's not that it was a coffee cup, it didn't fall off the table. It actually was intentionally broken, and we need someone who actually understands how to fix systems. So why am I the right candidate? One, I was born and raised in Maine. My family goes back generations, and I know what it's like to walk both in the worlds of Western Maine and the mountains of Western Maine and in the world of Portland. I can talk both languages, and there are multiple languages. Secondarily, I am a systems person. When the superdelegate fight threatened to divide the party, I stepped in to make sure that we had a solution that could move us forward and bring us back together, and to put power back into the hands of the many and not just the chosen few. When we had a system that brought us Paul LePage, because we had a lot of choice in this state, I led the fight to bring ranked choice voting. We are going to have a ranked choice voting election. You get to choose multiple people, and that's because of the work that I did over the course of a decade, along with Dick Woodbury and a whole bunch of other people, to bring ranked choice voting to Maine. We changed the system, things fall into place. The other thing that I did was to make sure that we could take on legalization of marijuana, because arrest rates, you are twice as likely to be arrested in Maine for marijuana possession if you are African American than if you are white. That is a social justice issue. At every step of the way, people said it cannot be done, you cannot do it. I stood up to my party, I stood up to my friends repeatedly. In 2008 and 2016, we brought down the superdelegate system nationwide. Maine was a leader. We changed to ranked choice voting across the nation, across the state. Maine was a leader, and we legalized marijuana. Maine was a leader in that as well. I led the fight for all three of those, and all came to conclusion in 2016. I hope I can earn your vote.
Advocate Betsy Sweet.
Hi, thanks so much for coming, and thanks to the Democratic Party of Kennebec County and Alicia, and to Megan, whom I took to the Soviet Union when she was 15 years old, along with 36 other young students from Maine, to bring about world peace. And we did a pretty good job at ending the Cold War, and she's gone on to great things. And thank you for the birthday wishes. What a better way to spend. I'm glad you all came to my party. That was really nice, so thank you. So, like my colleagues up here, we often get asked, I get asked all the time, why are you running for governor? Who would want to do that? And sometimes I ask myself the same question. But I am running at this moment in history I have not been a career, this has not been my idea, and I haven't thought about being governor of my whole life. I haven't run a career to make sure that I could be governor. But I think we have a particular moment in history that we can take advantage of here in Maine to make things better for everyday Mainers. I have spent my life trying to make things better. My dad always said, make sure you leave a place better than when you found it. And he meant, you know, sweep the floor, rake the leaves before you leave. I thought he meant change the world. So that's what I did. And so for the last 35 years in Maine, I have been working to make that happen so that we can get a Maine that works for everybody. And so at first I thought, well, what we need to do is bring new voices to the table, because when I arrived, there weren't women, there weren't people of color, there was very few diverse voices in the legislative process. So I worked to bring and represented elderly and women and children and people with disabilities and people with mental health issues to get to the table. And we made some great strides, but we couldn't go far enough. So I thought, well, maybe it's not just the voices, maybe we have to work together. It's because we're stronger together than we are separately. So I worked to form the Women's Legislative Agenda Coalition, the Dirigo Alliance, so all the progressive groups so we could work together with strength, which brought about a lot of big changes. I worked to do Maine Can Do Better, the Maine Can Do Better Alliance, so that we could actually make a budget that actually worked for Mainers. And then I thought, well, if we're really smart, we'll bring numbers and figures together. So we founded the Maine Center for Economic Priorities. Even that's not enough. Because as much as we want to fix the system, there's only one way to fix it, and that is to get money out of politics. I helped to write with Marilyn Kennebec, who's sitting in the audience, the first clean elections law in Maine and in the country. Every issue that matters to Mainers, healthcare, energy, education, gun safety legislation, every single one, no matter how far we get it, no matter how many referendums we pass and vote for, when it gets to the end, it gets stopped by money and politics. And not just on the Republican side, it's through the whole system. And until we walk the walk of saying we will not earn the trust back of Mainers who are cynical about our system, cynical about the Democratic Party, believe that we don't represent their real lives. So I am running as a clean elections candidate because I believe that's our first thing in the new playbook we need. We can't keep doing things the same way we've done them over and over again and expect different results. And the first play in that new playbook has got to be to get money out of politics. I'm an organizer, I know how to do it, and I hope that you will be part of the movement to actually change our system here in Maine, which will reverberate around the country so that we can make real progress for real people in their lives. That's why I'm running. Thank you.
So our first question from the blue folder is, how will you support clean energy after you are elected? And we have a new randomized order for this question. And so our first speaker is Mark Eves.
Thank you, and great question. And one opportunity for the state. I was just one of a handful of people in the room with Governor LePage over the last several years. And I saw opportunity after opportunity fall off the table. This is an opportunity for our state that is low-hanging fruit and ripe for picking. Two areas: solar. We have enormous opportunity in our solar industry. The second is offshore wind, and we're doing it right here in Maine. The University of Maine is leading the charge with their research and development on offshore wind turbines. We have the best wind in the world in our Gulf, and a great opportunity. So those are two ways, and both of those can be connected back to our economy. So one of the motivating factors for me of running, there are a lot of them, but most of it had to do with sitting in the room with Governor LePage saying no to him when he's trying to roll back a whole lot of things, and seeing all of the things that we could advance. And solar and clean energy are one path. We have to have a governor that recognizes that global warming is a real thing. If you don't recognize it, you're not going to make progress on it. So I think leadership starts at the top, recognizing the problem, and then developing solutions that are consistent and core to our brand here in Maine. And I think renewable energy, solar and wind are incredible opportunities.
Diane Russell.
Thank you. So when I first ran for office, it was not because I wanted to expand the Opportunity Maine program that I helped get into office, but it was into place. But it was because I was listening to MPBN, and there was a woman speaking very powerfully about the need for weatherization in our state. The woman is sitting here in the audience, Dale McCormick, and she should still be working in the State House, but she's not because people demonized her and took her out without any reason. She was leading the charge on weatherization through the Maine Housing Authority, and we worked really hard my freshman year. I led a delegation of folks to really fight to invest in energy efficiency, to take the Efficiency Maine program so that it wasn't just about electrical efficiency, but that actually addressed the housing stock and helped us to be able to reduce not only our consumption of oil, but also to make sure that the housing was warmer by the end of the day. And it was really good because in the moment that happened, we had a major oil crisis on our hands. Oil was going up to $4 or $4.50 a gallon, and people didn't know how to afford their oil. We need to continue with investments in energy efficiency. I've sponsored feed-in tariff legislation. We talk a lot about solar. The way to get to solar is really to build out a feed-in tariff, very much like Germany has, and it creates an incentivization for finances. And we also need to increase the renewable portfolio standard, which we used to be ahead on, and now we're getting behind.
Janet Mills.
Thank you. Yeah, I supported Reggie in the legislature. I support it now. I hope we stay with Reggie, and I hope we use the funds wisely. I support weatherization. I think, you know, ideally 90 to 100% of our housing stock should be weatherized. You know, we have the oldest housing stock in the country, and about 8% of our housing stock are mobile homes, which are very, very difficult to weatherize. I've done it. I've gone out with CAP agencies and weatherized homes, getting them ready for winter. But weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels is critical, all kinds of fossil fuels. And that does mean incentivizing solar power. And that means who you appoint to the PUC, quite frankly, is really critical. And who you work with in the legislature on these issues is really critical. Working across the aisles, building coalitions to improve the net metering that this PUC voted to phase out over the objections of many of us. So those things are important to me. As Attorney General, I have fought to maintain clean air and clean water rules and regulations. I've fought Volkswagen of America, and as a result of our lawsuit, we're not only getting funds to help with weatherization programs and the like, but also a third of their new vehicles are going to be electric vehicles. I firmly believe that electric vehicles are the thing of the future because so much of our carbon emissions are transportation related. So we've got to wean ourselves off gasoline and all fossil fuels. Energy efficiency standards, I have fought to maintain them. I fought to fight the rollbacks of the Trump administration on the methane leaks, on the mercury rules, and on energy efficiency standards for appliances and CAFE standards for cars. I'm in there every day working with other attorneys generals to fight the Trump administration to preserve our clean air and clean water that Senator Muskie and Senator Mitchell fought so hard to enact.
Jim Boyle.
Thank you. I think as Democrats, we're pretty universally in support of renewable energy, and in fact, we've been at other forums together, at least one, that we kind of fell into this pattern, so it's kind of tough to go toward the end because one of the first bills I would put in as governor would be restoring solar net metering credits back to where they were before the PUC took them away, and add to it or include in it the same language that was worked out over a year-long process with stakeholders to actually do studies so that we can compare how we can move away from fossil fuels as a state. I want to be a leader in doing that. More than that, in my case, my company, I'm an environmental scientist. My company is made up of bachelor's and master's level scientists. Most of them can talk. And we've actually worked out on the ground on renewable energy projects, making sure they're staying in compliance with rules, laws, and regulations and permits of the state of Maine and the federal government. So we've been on the ground helping implement these renewable energy projects. So it's not just talk, it's on the ground. And when I was in the Senate chairing the Environment Committee, one of the first and most important pieces of legislation I submitted was increased funding for the Efficiency Maine Trust, which was then rolled into an omnibus energy bill, which was then killed by the governor when he ran Statoil out of the state. So I want to, like others, support renewable energy, including offshore wind. And finally, The main thing that a governor of a state can do, or any leader of any group of people, is to set an example and lead by example. Tonight, I drove here in my electric Bolt. I did not use any gas to get here from Gorham. So if any of you have not done that, I suggest you do. When I left my house this morning, I had 290 miles of battery charge that I could use to go all over the state, and that's what I've done. And so, Colleen, if I call you on the way home, you know how to find me, right? Okay.
Betsy Sweet.
Thanks, yeah. So I think the first thing is to make sure we don't invest one more penny in dirty energy. Not one more state dollar for dirty energy. We don't need it. It's not, we can be self-sufficient. We do not need to import fossil fuels. We do not need to use dirty energy. Because you know what happens with these energy companies? It's great. They like to make the mess and make their profit in the mess, and then they want us all to clean it up. I'm a mom. I raise my kids. You know what? You make the mess, you pay to clean it up. They don't deserve to do business here. So I think that's number one. I also think that, you want to know why solar energy and all the clean energy gets stopped, all the initiatives? You know what happened to the solar bill this time when the veto? Money and politics. I hate to keep saying it, but we are not going to make progress as long as we had all the votes for the solar bill. We had the votes to overturn it. $75,000 from CMP later, we lost it. If we don't address this issue, we are not going to make progress on these things that we all care about. And I want to talk for 1 second also about human behavior, and Jim touched on it. But we have to learn about our consumption. You know, I think about when I look at what's happened in Puerto Rico and the devastation in Puerto Rico. If they had renewable solar energy and alternative energy there, they could be back on having power right now and not have to wait 9 months for it. Also, I just learned an amazing thing. Maine has more heat pumps, has sold more heat pumps, efficient heat pumps, than almost any state in the country. And about 75% of people who have them don't use them. So we need to do education, we need to teach people on how to be efficient, and we have to make sure that we only invest in renewable resources, which is going to produce amazing jobs for our economy.
Adam.